There's a reason why this movie's on Paramount Plus, so let's get to the review. Welcome back, film fans. This is Let's Be Real Brad. Today we're going to be talking about the brand new sci-fi action thriller Paramount Plus film called Infinite. It is directed by Antoine Fuqua and it stars Mark Wahlberg and Chiwetel Ejiofor. This movie was supposed to be released in theaters as a big wide release from Paramount, and I think it's quite obvious when this movie gets put to Paramount Plus like a week or two before its release and barely has any marketing for this movie, because this movie is a big pile of trash that Paramount just wants to sweep under the rug. This movie misses the mark on anything that was trying to copy, like The Old Guard, The Matrix, and any other good sci-fi action movie. But it ends up not working with a script that is so ridiculously bad, a direction that feels like there's no end, and acting that honestly made me laugh so damn hard. So where in the heck do I begin with this movie? I guess we're just gonna start right with the terrible screenplay. This movie tries to be so much smarter and cooler than it is, of being reincarnated and going into another body, but with Mark Wahlberg's character, he doesn't know who he is. We've seen this idea before, but this movie decides to be the most boring and uninteresting film possible by just adding exposition on exposition, by trying to make this movie a lot more complicated and just so hard to understand when this movie is so simple to its core. It honestly boggles my mind of why the execution was done so terribly. I didn't find myself invested at all within this story, as most of this movie is just exposition and we don't get any action until like the end of the film. So this movie didn't provide anything that this movie was probably hyping itself up to be. My next big issue with this movie is the acting. Mark Wahlberg gives one of his most hilarious performances to date that is right up there with The Happening, as he is so bad in this movie. There are many moments in this movie I was simply laughing out of my seat watching Mark Wahlberg trying to act with Chiwetel Ejiofor and all these actors on screen. Everyone else in this movie is completely horrible and probably given no direction of what to do with their characters, but someone big like Mark Wahlberg should be able to do his own thing, and it just doesn't come out. This could also be due to the horrendous dialogue that these actors were given that are literally so gut-busting laughing that I could not take this movie seriously, even though it's trying to be so over dramatic. There's a lot of boring, generic scenes in here where characters just spill out exposition about themselves and trying to make the audience care about them, but we know deep down I don't give a flying crap about you. My next issue with this movie is the boring and horrible direction. I don't know if all of this movie is completely his fault, but the fact that the acting is bad, the screenplay is bad, and the whole direction of the film feels so lifeless, boring, and the most generically bad thing possible, I almost gotta put a lot of the blame on him with this movie. You almost feel like this movie was taken over by a studio and trying to check off all the things in their checklist of what makes a good sci-fi action movie, and Antoine Fuqua's direction doesn't feel like it's apparent in this movie. One of the most disappointing aspects of this movie is the lack of action. There is no exhilarance, there is no energy, and there's no excitement that happens with this movie. The movie starts off with a pretty entertaining action scene that I was really excited to see where this movie was going. Then after that, we don't get an action scene for it almost feels like 40 to 50 minutes. And it's a small action scene, and then it's back to exposition, and we don't get any fights until the end of the second act. The action is desperately needed to make this movie watchable, and there is hardly any of it in it. But when the action is in the movie, I found it to be somewhat entertaining, but the bad direction and the bad editing to go along with it makes some of these action scenes so lackluster and completely disposable by any other generic action movie you've seen. The other technical aspects of this movie, like the editing, cinematography, direction, are all bad in this movie. I didn't find any positives with it. I also found the music to be the most generic, boring, and uninteresting track for a sci-fi action thriller. It didn't provide anything to make this movie exciting. I also found the CGI in this movie to be so mediocre, and if you told me you hated the CGI, I would totally respect that, because the CGI is so boring and bad to look at, where you feel like you have such a big cast and a big studio like Paramount that should be able to put money into this movie, and this movie looks so cheap in that comparison. So Infinite is one of the most boring, bad, and worse than generic sci-fi action thrillers of the entire year. So I am giving Infinite a 2 out of 10. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new video. As always, I will see you all in the following review.